Morning, everybody. This is Ed Bosch, Project Manager, IEDA. It's 9:45, so we'll get going. I think we've got um, actually more time than we'll need for this, but we figured there would be quite a few questions since it's a brand new program. So that's why we allotted like 15 extra minutes. So let's get into it here. Oops. Click too fast here. Hold on. All right. So, as we just said, this is a brand new program component for our CDBG Small Cities program. Um, it will be a head-to-head competitive process, one deadline annually will be scored competitively. And the idea of this, we have never, at least since I've been with IDA, never had a planning grant as such. Many other states do, but we thought for a program of this size and scope that having a plan presented beforehand was probably a good idea on a number of levels. And we're looking at funding studies that analyzed targeted distressed neighborhoods. So for the study portion, the maximum grant award will be 25,000, and a minimum local match will be required at 15% of whatever you request. Excuse me. Administration is limited to $2,000 or 10% of the award, whichever is less. Okay, because we don't anticipate there will be much administration need on these. For instance, the environmental, they will all be exempted, so you will just need to upload a couple of forms and you'll be good to go, no publication and so on. And also there's only the single procurement for the consultant for the study to go through. So importantly, these plans will determine which cities will be eligible to apply for the comprehensive neighborhood development activity grants the following year. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. When we say following year, it'll be calendar year 23, but probably in the early part of 23, which also be something different. Applications will open in Iowa grants probably today, as Dan said in the previous session. If not today, it will be this week. Deadline for submittal is November 1st, and we expect to fund about 5 to 7 plants. All right, so I thought I'd give you some screenshots for these application forms. Nothing really too different from what you're used to. Questions, of course, are worded in a new way because we're looking for different things in a study than we would in actual activities. But I think fairly clear or simple. But we'll take some narrative on your part. Okay. There at the top, we are going to ask you to attach a sample RFP for what you plan on using to solicit for a consultant to do the study, because we want to see how that's going to be. It does not have to be the final version, but should be close to that. And then one of the things we're going to emphasize is, what is going to be done with this plan afterwards. What is it going to lead to? And we will want to see evidence of local support, um, particularly some from the neighborhood that's to be affected, and then project milestones there. You're used to that from other grants as well, although these are a little bit, again, different. Okay, the budget will be very simple because there's only planning and administration, and there's the grant amount and the match amount. Um, that's all you got. So that shouldn't be too difficult to fill out. And we don't really care where the local match comes from. Most likely will be from the city involved, but could be from, excuse me, from another local source as well. And required attachments, the typical um, items there. The um, we will want maps of the proposed study area to be fairly focused and clearly readable, and so that we can delineate exactly where that area is. And we'll want a floodplain map to make sure that none of the targeted study area is in a floodplain. All right, so within this application, we want you to tell us what you expect the proposed plan to include. Okay, remember that is the proposed plan at this point because you're just asking for money to do it um, in this application. But the plan must be a description and an analysis of a selected neighborhood to receive funding. Um, so, oh, and I should say, it is possible to propose two areas to be studied, but we will only, if your study is successful, um, we will probably only fund one of those two areas, but you could study um, a couple of them to help you determine which one would be better for an activity grant. So strongly suggested components of a plan, maps and photos, of course, graphs, tables, charts, if they are illustrative and help us understand the neighborhood, and the estimated population and number of households. And we are saying a maximum area of 200 households. We don't want this to be too big because we're looking at a large impact in a relatively small area. Now, obviously, you can have businesses, institutional uses, any other kind of land use in your neighborhood, targeted neighborhood, but we're basing it on households for the size. Clearly defined plan area boundaries. Again, we really need to know where the target area is within the community. We'll want to know LMI percentages, other socioeconomic data, the historical, cultural background of the neighborhood, blighting factors, any other special conditions that there might be there, reasons for decline of the area, community development, social and housing needs within the neighborhood. And then we would like you to do a ballpark estimate of the cost of those activities that, I'm sorry, skip down. Identify the types of CDBG activities that could address the identified issues, at least in general, and then give us a educated guess as to what the cost of those activities would be. And when we're saying the cost, it's not just a potential CDBG grant portion of the cost, but total cost. Okay, other important parts of your application. Why is the chosen area a priority for a planning study and possible funding? Again, clear maps, a narrative explaining the purpose and end result of the study. How will it be used and by whom? A time frame with milestones for preparation and completion of the study. And we are saying you need to have it completed within 9 months of the grant award. Again, a draft copy of the RFP to be used to solicit consultants. If you want to get some extra points for project readiness, the best case scenario is an RFP process that's already underway when the application is submitted, as you could make your selection contingent upon grant award. So you would have a kind of a head start on that process. Not required. We're just saying that if you do that, um, your project readiness score will be a little higher. Documentation of local match, as on all our grants. And then again, evidence of local support, but especially from the affected neighborhood. We want to know that the people that will be most directly affected are aware of the project and are in favor of the project. Okay, so the application scoring criteria, all of these are going to be scored 1 to 5, and there's 6 of these. So perfect application, which there is no such thing actually as a perfect application, or I haven't seen one yet, but anyway, would be 30 points. So how well will the plan define the target neighborhood? So again, LMI, socioeconomic data, maps, photos, historical info, special features. Why did you choose it? How well will plan define housing and community development needs? So there we're looking at, water and sanitary sewer, housing, parks, commercial building conditions, community facilities, overall blight, street, sidewalk, stormwater. It's pretty much every kind of physical aspect of the neighborhood should be touched upon. And if there isn't a problem, you can just simply, um, the plan can simply state, that streets are in fair condition, for instance. How well will plan identify potentially CDBG funded activities proposed to address the prioritized issues? So we'll want you to, again, define at least generally possible activities if you received funding to do so, the issues that the activities will address, the impact on those issues, ballpark cost estimates, and the overall impact on the entire neighborhood. Then number 4, how will the neighborhood plan be utilized? What groups, organizations will use it? What will its specific purpose be? How will it guide city policies? How will it help define future CDBG applications? So probably many or most of you have seen cases, and I certainly have, where there have been plans prepared by a city or a county, or on behalf of a city or a county, I should say. And uh, once they're done, they do nothing but sit on somebody's desk or on a shelf somewhere. That is what we are really trying to avoid here. That's why we ask number 4, and we'll look at that closely, because it has to be a practical, usable plan that's going to have a real world effect. Community support can be demonstrated through your local cost share, letters from the city, civic organizations, schools, not-for-profits, private businesses, evidence of media coverage in public meetings pertaining to that area or held in that area. In the project readiness, how well prepared is the draft RFP for solicitation of consultants? And has the process started? Again, if you want brownie points there, but again, not required. But we want to see the purpose of the study clearly stated, what the plan contents are going to be outlined, the qualifications needed for the consultant should be evident, contact submittal information for the city or county, and then a time for response to the RFP. Okay, so what are we looking for in the completed plan? Now we're kind of jumping ahead here, but if you receive funding for an application for a plan and submit it, what will we want to see? So adequately addressing all or most of the items listed on slide number 3. That was the bulleted points of like 10 different things. Plan should be concise and fact-based. Please tell the consultants to forget about the fluff. It's just something more we have to read, and it's not gonna get you any points. Visual aids and detailed maps, photographs, graphs, tables, etc., as they are needed. Real world usefulness, as I said a minute ago, not to sit on a shelf or be too vague or impractical or grandiose for implementation. Again, I've seen all of those things in a lot of my time working for municipalities. Kind of became a pet peeve of mine. The city paid for quite a bit of money for plans, and they were I encountered some that are all of those things, either too vague, where they don't really help you plan anything. They're impractical, for a number of reasons, financially or politically or historically. I mean, a lot of different reasons. Or they're so grandiose that, yeah, if you had, $100 million, you could probably implement those things. So those kind of plans that head in those directions are not going to score very, very highly in terms of moving on to activity funding. And importantly, the plan should be sufficient to provide guidance and suggested activities to form the basis of a subsequent comprehensive neighborhood. I have development in there. I should really have changed that to revitalization. I use those two words interchangeably, but it is officially revitalization grant application. Plans found to be impactful, feasible, and complete will result in an invitation to submit an application for actual activity funding next year. And if you produce a plan that's unsatisfactory in our opinion, then you will not get invited to apply for actual monies to implement redevelopment activities. All right, so talking about the actual grant for monies for construction and such. So it's scheduled for program year 2023. We are asking that, and again, this is brand new, but that you fund several interrelated but distinct activities, such as, and this is not an absolutely exhaustive list. There are other things that kind of ran out of thoughts and space to put on here, but there are some other CDBG eligible activities that I think basically we will look and consider just about anything. But here are some of the ones that would be more common. You can do through this program owner or tenant occupied single family housing rehabilitation. So that still exists under this program. We run the same way as it always has been. You can do commercial building facades. Will be run like the DGR program. Parks and open space, sidewalks, bike or walking trails, stormwater drainage improvements, community facilities, water and sewer upgrades, curb and gutter, street repair, demolition and clearance, streetscape improvements. Now, I will say this, we will emphasize more and tend to fund more those activities that there is no other option for you to get money from. So for instance, um, water and sewer upgrades, well, you have the normal water and sewer program. So you can include that, but I wouldn't make that a dominant activity, because if it is the dominant activity, we'll say, well, you need to tap into water and sewer. Community facilities, same thing. Yes, can be included, but should not be the majority of the monies. Some of these other things, there is no other place to get them, like or get the funds, like housing rehab. Commercial building facades, there's DTR, but we realize, that's has minimum requirements. So this would be a good place, for instance, to do 2 or 3 buildings, as you were able to through the COVID monies. But we will understand that maybe you only have 2 or 3, you don't have 6 or 8, and so a regular DTR program wouldn't work for you. But if you put 10 commercial facades in there, we'll probably say, well, maybe a DTR program would be a better fit. Okay. Green Streets is not on here, but certainly you can have a Green Street element in anything that you do, and it could well be funded. Okay. So again, kind of looking forward here, but this is also going to be head-to-head competitive. I see a typo there, application action. I think you know what I mean. We expect to have an application workshop sometime early next year, and that would be after the plans, the plans that are funded will be coming back. Some of the earliest ones probably sometime in the first quarter of 2023. When we are ready to act on awarding or selecting plans that we believe can have can result in a full application for activities, we'll have a workshop. So maybe early next year is a little bit optimistic, but it will be prior to our normal rounds. So again, we'll have a special application workshop just for the Comprehensive Neighborhood Revitalization Grant. Now, importantly, you have to combine 3 or more of the outlined eligible activities on previous slide, or some others that are eligible that weren't mentioned. So we are mandating that you do at least 3, because we want this to be comprehensive and interrelated. Okay. Maximum award amount likely for program year 2023 is $1.75 million. The administration budget max is 70 grand. Now that's more than normal, but of course you'll be doing 3 activities instead of 1. So We thought it should be higher than what we typically allow. Expected local match is 15% of the total project request. So 15% is not a high percentage match wise, but remember the amount you can request is 1.75 million. So 15% of that is still obviously a big chunk of money. We will only probably fund 2 or 3 full activity grants per program year because that's all the money we'll have. Grant periods could be 3 to 4 years in length rather than the standard 3 for most of our current programs, because it just might take you 4 years to get the activities done. And that'll kind of depend on what you're asking for in the application, anywhere from 3 to 4 years. All right, and then again, flipping back a little bit, whatever activities you request funding for next year in a full application must be documented and justified in this year's planning study. So there has to be a tie back to the study. Okay, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but if we fund, say, 7 studies, those 7 people would be invited to apply for the full activity grant. It's a little confusing, I know. That's why we left time for questions. Okay, so that's a quick analysis or quick description of this new companion programs. So we want to just take chat questions, I guess.
Can you hear me now? I don't know. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if a study, the first question is a study has already been completed for a distressed neighborhood, would we still be eligible to apply for funding for implementation, or would we need to have another study created?
Okay, where was that one?
Very first one.
Okay, from Vicky.
What are you doing?
You guys hearing all that echo? Here we go. All right, can you hear me now? Thumbs up.
Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay, so Vicky asks, if the study has already been completed for a distressed neighborhood, would we still be eligible to apply for funding for implementation, or would we need to have another study created? That's a very good question. I think you'd still have to at least update and revise or specify that plan a little bit and submit it. So, yeah, I think we would need for you to, like I said, at least redo it a little bit and then submit it anew to us. Hey, Jeremy, can a cog bid on or perform the planning studies? And we're not we restricting it to so-called professional consultant or design firms or whatever. Yes, a cog can perform the planning study. Yeah, you'd be held to the same standards as any consultant, but yes, cogs are eligible. Okay, Danny, does the town itself need to be LMI, or we're looking specifically for the LMI target area? Okay. Um, it is the target area. Now, if the town itself is also LMI, that will help you in your scoring a little bit, but we will need to know the target area it's LMI. So you can use census data perhaps, or a survey to determine that. Survey probably be best, especially in a smaller community where the census data is too broad.
Fine. Here, no, it's not on yours. It's from Sarah.
Oh, yes, yes. Um, okay, yeah, going back to Jeremy's question, can a COD bid on or perform the planning study? Yes. How, the problem with that though is, you couldn't also administer then, because there would be I think there would be a conflict there. Yeah. Okay, Rose, if housing is an eligible activity, the project planning is traditionally done by COGS. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Again, the COG can do the study.
Oh,
But did,
Ed, can I chime in for a second?
mm-hmm.
So you're saying a cog can't both plan and administer, but I mean, that's typically what happens in the housing, in housing grants already. The cog does the general admin, and then through an RFP process, that same cog is typically submitted to do technical services. So why would that not be acceptable for one of these planning grants?
Because we don't offer technical services.
Well, let me think, you know what? Let me think about that one a little bit. Um, it seems like to me, that's a good question. I should have thought about that before this presentation. But it seems like to me there'd still be a conflict, because if you're administering, then you're part of, you know, okaying the, well, but that's true with technical services too. It's gonna say you're part of okaying paying yourself. Yeah, let me think about that one. I'll have to send out a,
We'll do an FAQ.
yeah, we'll have to do like an FAQ on that, I think. But that, yeah, understand the problem there. Okay, let's see. Next one, demo and clearance would hopefully support an LMI national objective and would be a boon to many communities, but in the event that a house said daycare wasn't built within the grant, could it satisfy some blight? I'm not sure I understand that question. Rose, can you explain that?
Yeah, well, I mean, since the grant period is 3 to 4 years, I mean, that makes it more doable. I'm just thinking if demo or clearance is part of a proposed neighborhood revitalization grant, then I, I mean, my understanding is that with CDBG, it's only eligible as its own thing. Well, I can't remember. I might be confusing it with NSP, but as a slum and blight thing, and I know you like to avoid that. It's best that anything that can be a means to an end in an LMI national objective should be, but just worst case scenario, say they're not able to get, a house or a community facility built within the grant period. I mean, is there, as a last resort, if they demo it, could it be slum and blight?
Oh, yes. I think we could probably qualify that as spot sum and buy. Yeah. Yeah. And the demos we'll have to be really careful with because HUD has some strange strings attached to those that we'll have to work through if demolition is offered, but we think we can get through them. Yeah. Okay, Myrtle says, our downtown's more favorable for funding than strictly residential neighborhood. No, no, it won't matter really. If there is any kind of a preference, it's probably the other way. I think maybe strictly residential neighborhoods are um, going to be a little more favorable than downtowns, but uh, it's not a big factor either way. Tracy, do you anticipate funding studies next year for 2024? Yes. Yeah. We should have funding studies each year. That's the plan. Will you be awarding a certain amount of studies plans then for 2022? Um, well, yeah, um, around half a dozen for 2022, yes. Given some activities require Davis-Bacon and others do not, how might we consider that issue in the planning process? Well, I mean, if they do require Davis-Bacon, then you'll have to figure that into the cost and into your whoever's a grant administrator will have to deal with that. But as far as the overall plan, um, we're not really concerned about what's Davis-Bacon or not. We're just looking at the activities and the impact that they're going to have if implemented. Okay, are entitlement cities eligible for this grant? No, this is small cities only, less than 50,000. Would target area income survey be completed now as part of the planning app or be completed as part of the planning process before the application for a project? Well, we do want to know the LMI income of your target area. So if you can determine that, if you feel comfortable determining that without a traditional survey, that's fine. If not, um, an income survey would be recommended. So, um, like I said, I think it somewhat depends on the size of the community and the location of the neighborhood. Target area income survey is probably the most accurate way of going, of course, but not necessarily required. Okay. So currently we help with apps and administer virtually all CDBG grants. This one is different. Well, it might be depending on if the COG is the one doing the study. As I said, well, I'll have to do a little research on that. Then Myrtle, is this the schedule? Planning grants due November 1st. Awards by December. Consult study completed by October, November. So it makes sense to have the implementation grants due after November when the
Hey,
plan.
Ed, my
Mhm.
question really was, there was discussion about the implementation grants being due first quarter 2023, but that would be before the planning has taken place, was really the point of my rather long question there, but,
Yeah,
so did you really,
right.
first quarter
We
24?
we would not have those grants due back for any time in early 2023. We're just thinking about maybe we could have a workshop sometime in that
Oh,
period.
okay, that sounds good.
But the more I think about it, it probably will not be early 2023. Probably take people longer to do their plans than we would, you know. In a perfect world, they would come back pretty fast, but probably won't happen that way.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Yep. Okay, Isaiah, as far as the planning phase is concerned, does that mean that all A&Es will complete one, or can we use implementation phase to fully complete it? Does that mean that can we use the implementation phase? Yeah, I mean, your architecture and engineering won't, that won't even be part of the planning phase. That will be all of the um, any architect or engineering services you need will be in the implementation phase. Well, with you might need an architect or engineer um, in a smaller role to help you with your cost estimates, but I think that would be about it at the planning stage. Okay. Anybody else? Like I said, I know this is new and kind of confusing with the timing, and we're still kind of working through it ourselves here, but um,
Ed, this is Jim Holtz.
mhm.
You mentioned that the planning area could not include a floodplain, but I guess I'm questioning why that would be, because we could actually enhance the area without, new development or, new structures in the floodplain. You've got demolition and clearance that could actually improve the floodplain. You've got park and open space activities that could improve the floodplain.
Yeah, it's always been our policy, um, with a few exceptions we made for the COVID grants, um, very specific situations, to not put money into floodplain areas. So we could think about that,
Well,
especially if you're
good.
talking about like parks or open space.
Well,
But
it's just a plan. It's not an implementation. It's so you're not putting money into the floodplain. You're just planning for it. So the overall plan should probably include, if there's a floodplain in a distressed neighborhood, you should probably be addressing the floodplain within the overall plan, and then implementation activities, maybe you don't, you don't use CBG funds to invest in.
okay,
And
yeah,
I
I thought
mean,
you were talking about further down the line. Yeah, if it's part of the overall um, revitalization and is reflected in the study, that's fine.
well, also distressed areas typically are in floodplains, and I mean, there might be some things you don't want to fund there, but I mean, the federal regulations provide an 8-step process for precisely that reason, so that you could do things in floodplains responsibly.
Right. I'm aware of that. But again, it's our policy basically not to put money into floodplain areas because of the, because they are subject to flooding. But again, I will revisit that and talk about that.
Ed, another question, your ballpark cost estimates for the application itself for implementation activities? I mean, if we're truly planning and involving the public, we really don't have a clue as to what's going to be going in, or we shouldn't, because the public will think, well, this is already a foregone conclusion. What are you looking for those estimates? I mean, it could be, I mean, it's a total shot in the dark.
Well, that's where I think you're gonna have to have some input from your public works department if the city is of some size, or an engineer or an architect. We just want to get a general idea of the scope, the financial scope.
So are you looking at this plan as more of a feasibility study rather than a plan, that you already have an idea of what you want to do and you just need to, figure out what it's going to take to achieve, which would be more of a feasibility study?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say it's a feasibility study in a sense, yes.
Okay.
Ed, I have another question about something that I don't know if you want to revisit and get back to us on, but I mean, you're saying that you would prefer to have a income survey for a target area, but I mean, my understanding is that for every type of project we've done in the past, if the citywide LMI percentage was at least 51%, that sufficed. And especially if, for a timeline that's 2 months and change, I mean, it just makes it a lot more feasible if we can use a citywide LMI percentage.
You can. I mean, that still holds true if the community-wide is more than 51%, you've met the LMI. What we're trying to figure out is how much more distressed the neighborhood that you're choosing is than the community as a whole. So if there is a way to do that, then that helps us know that the area that the money would conceivably go to is like the most needy.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Let's see, there's one other question here. Oh, there's several more questions here, I guess.
There's 3.
Yeah, okay, Tom, same thing about target area LMI. Difficult to do a survey in 2 months. Yeah, if you can't use census block data, then and there's no time to do the survey, I would just go by local knowledge of the area and try and document why you think that the area that you're targeting is higher LMI than the community as a whole. When will the citywide LMI numbers be updated? I think that only happens like late spring, I believe. Although HUD varies that from year to year when they do it. It used to be like in March, but I think lately it's been like more like in May or even later. So, yeah, I don't think I doubt you're going to have any new numbers between now and November 1st.
Yeah, Ed, this is Dan, and the LMI figures for doing surveys and things, those are updated every year and come out roughly when you said. I don't know if you're asking about the citywide LMI percentages that are based on the HUD ACS data. Those, we're still working off the 2011 to 2015 data, I believe. We haven't gotten any word as to when those are going to be updated for that community-wide LMI percentage. So we're still working off of that at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Anybody else? Oh, like I said, I will go back and check on some things, and then we'll send a blanket email out to everybody as soon as we can. All right. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions, so thanks everybody for your time, and hopefully this new program will be well received and be effective out there. So take care, everybody.